Hey everybody, it's Tripl-L coming in with a Dr. Stone video. This time specifically, it's an anime manga comparison trivia video looking at episode 10 of the Dr. Stone anime and comparing it to chapters 25, 26, and 27. You guys all know how this works. I'll just go through the episode and tell you little changes that the anime made. They're going to be super nitpicky, although I can tell you this episode's got some really interesting things going on. You'll notice as we go through. It's definitely one of the most, I feel, changed of the Dr. Stone episodes. I think they've had a little bit more fun with this episode. So before we get another little fun point, I mentioned that we're covering chapter 25, but it's actually only a very small bit of chapter 25. Everything before the opening in episode 10 is the chapter 25 material that they left off. It's actually really interesting. There's like 2 pages of chapter 27 that also weren't adapted at the end. Those are probably going to be the pages that we start off with next week. Anyway, let's just get into it. The first serious change, the anime added some lines for Kohaku when she's recapping to Suika about Tsukasa. In the manga, we just jump to the Tsukasa is a bad guy line from Suika. So this is something that the anime was doing from the very get-go within this episode. They were just reiterating a lot of information. So you could see like wherever they reiterated information was probably an anime original line. We go into the next change. We sort of missed a page. In the manga, we saw Tsukasa pouring the miracle fluid on Gen. Now that isn't that much of a big deal, but we did get the narration in the manga explaining that Gen was released 10 days before meeting Senku. We don't really get that information in the anime. This one was a small change. Next change is a fun change. In the manga, Gen just explained who Tsukasa was and how he knows him. In the anime, they gave us a nice flashback scene. This is a case of good job anime. This is great. They gave us more content of the old world. Now the next change is where I was thinking that the anime was going crazy this week. Here's the page of Tsukasa giving Gen his mission. Seems weird, right? The anime had greatly expanded the scene. Although what they expanded with was pretty much just reiteration of Tsukasa's position. The weirdest thing that I saw in this scene in terms of the anime was that Tsukasa referred to them in the anime, which doesn't really make sense because at this point in time, Taiju and Yuzuriha should be back with Tsukasa. But that may be a Crunchyroll sub problem. Honestly though, when you take full stock of this scene that we got in the anime, it just seems like the anime was trying to waste time. Like they expanded material, but again, they reiterated information. It does end up being very viewer friendly though, so that's really worthwhile. Oh, also this material, this was at the start of chapter 26, this is where that material is from. Okay, next up is the beatdown. The anime expanded on the actual assault. Another case of good job anime. This is one where the expansion really helped the brutality of the situation. And while we're on this topic, this is kind of like a small change. The manga, at least on Viz, Chrome has a catchphrase, bad. And yes, I know it's not great, but it's worth mentioning that it didn't make it into the anime, at least when it comes to the subs. Okay, next, get ready because things get messy like crazy here. They rearranged the timeline hard for this episode, and because of that, there's a lot of changes. So I think the best way to go about this one is to first show you what they did when they were healing Gen in the manga. There, that's it. 1 page of Gen being healed and the next day he's gone. You can already kind of tell the changes here. The Suika telling everyone about magma scene actually happened in chapter 27 after Gen had left, as opposed to what the anime presented. Consequently, we end up seeing Gen reporting to Tsukasa before we ever see Suika telling us about magma. This timeline change caused quite a few changes. So for now, we're going to jump ahead to the chapter 27 material of Suika and what she saw when it came to magma. So there's a few changes that occur. One minor one is that Suika in the manga doesn't make the mistake of saying that Gen was murdered, which Kohaku then had to correct. When you consider everything about how this was presented, honestly, it just seems like they were eating up more time. They were trying to eat up as many seconds of the episode's runtime as they could, especially when you consider that this same joke, Suika mistaking Gen for being dead, they used it later again. The next minor change in this portion is that Senku laughed at Gen being at the wrong place at the wrong time. In the anime, you just had Chrome acknowledging that you just pretty much had bad luck, whereas in the manga, Senku and Chrome were laughing about it. Now this was nixed from the anime because in the anime, Gen was still on death's door at this moment in time, so it would have been very inappropriate for the two characters to be laughing about it. And this leads us into another skipped panel where Chrome rationalizes his and Senku's laughing at Gen. The rationalization was pretty much just Chrome saying like, yeah, no, everything's okay now, so we can afford to laugh. Again, you can see why it makes sense that this happened here in the manga and not in the anime. Also worth mentioning, the gorilla joke was reused in the anime. Chrome did call Kohaku a gorilla again in the manga, but we didn't see the reaction that we got in the anime. Mostly because it was the way it was presented. In the manga, Kohaku didn't feel insulted that Magma doubted her strength. If anything, she was insulted because she thinks she is a normal woman. And that's where Chrome had made the gorilla comment. The next minor change is during the ground bout flashback. Kohaku's father had more of a presence in the flashback. He didn't appear on the equivalent panels for the scenes that I'm showing on the screen. And while we're in the flashbacks, it's worth pointing out that the manga made it clear that Magma was whispering and not just blurting out his plans. I know, it was just really weird when I was watching it in the anime, but I figured it was just he was whispering and Kohaku could hear it. Okay, still within the grand bout scene, the next change is the Ginro fantasy scene. Here's the one panel where that whole thing was adapted from. Yes, that whole bit was anime expansion. Important to note that this is consistent with Ginro's character though, so there is that. Next super minor change after all those bigger changes, they added 2 extra lines to Chrome's flashback. It just helped the scene flow better. Just worth pointing out, might as well, you know, we don't really have that many minor changes for this one. And then we go into the next change. We return to the chapter 26 material. You already saw what this material is based off. Now in these scenes with Gen, just look at anyone reiterating information and you can tell more or less which lines were anime only. One thing I can tell you is that how Chrome finds out Gen left is also anime original. That is, in the anime, he found out that Gen had left after being woken up by Ginro, whereas in the manga, he just went there and he saw that the guy was gone. Next change is, well, they pretty much milked Gen's runaway sequence, adding in that little trip, adding him just looking very desperate. They just added like 1 or 2 little shots. They also added in Kohaku's commentary on the guy's escape. She was just pretty much acting the way that you would expect Kohaku to act, but that wasn't in the manga. Next change, and this is I think my favorite change, in the manga Gen just shows up at Tsukasa's. The anime though had someone shoot an arrow at Gen. The thing is, this character isn't in the manga at this time because the character hadn't been introduced yet. Most likely the character hadn't been finalized yet. So this was a case where the anime could insert a character that made sense to be there, even though manga readers never got to see this character until way later on. Like, I'm talking months later, you don't get to see this character. So that was a pretty good use of future knowledge, so to say. The next change is the Kohaku x Senku fall. This doesn't happen in the manga. In the manga, Kohaku was pretty calm. Like I said, the anime gave Kohaku extra lines when it came around Gen running away. But hey, at least we know that the anime is shipping Kohaku and Gen, or at the very not Kohaku and Gen, Kohaku and Senku, or at the very least ship teasing them. Considering this and the Ginro fantasy though, it just seems like the anime team wanted to eat up time and play around with some ships though. And finally, last change that I feel like telling you guys about. The last little scene of Gen wanting chilled cola was also anime original. Those lines don't really appear in the manga, but that's fine because it was a really nice moment and it spoke to how much Gen and Senku understand each other. Okay, whew, that was a lot. Anime original material was the name of the game this time around, and when I look back at all the changes, all I can really see is that they were saving on time while also giving us new art. Which is actually really weird because when anime is trying to waste time, they do it by adding more shots of just characters talking, but the changes here came with new art, whether it be Ginro's fantasy or Kohaku falling on Senku, or even like the added scenes. And then you consider how they added more information than what the manga had initially presented, like when they had the scene of Gen meeting Tsukasa back in the original world. What it leads me to conclude is that while they were reiterating information a lot, most likely slowing down the rate of adaptation itself, it looks like they had a lot of fun with it. So I think this time it's less a case of them conserving resources and just them putting effort into the filler. And to that, I can only really say, good job, anime. Like, you know, you don't get that very often. But yeah, expansion and anime-only material was the name of the game for the changes this time around. I hope you guys enjoyed those little factoids. I hope you enjoyed the little trivia. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time, I hope you have an absolutely great day. I'm done. I'm getting out of here.